Just as a time check, we're about 1 minute from starting, so if you could get settled, we'll get going here in a second. I think it's 7 midnight. Yeah.
My kids are all well grown, so I don't have any commitments on that. No, I don't know. I can't.
Okay, it's 8:30, so in the sake of promptness, we'll get started. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, thank you and good morning to everyone. We'll show that we started the meeting at 8:31 per the agenda. And as customary, we'll start with open forum. If any members have any thoughts to share, please step up to the microphone and state your name, and we'll go from there. I don't know if this is a good trend or not. The last several meetings, we haven't had any open forum topics, so I guess I'll assume that's good news. I guess one last call. If not, we'll continue on the agenda then. Okay, then we'll move on to roll call. Amanda, if you would.
Brad Anderson.
Here.
Charlie Clark.
Here.
Bob DeMillionaire.
Here.
Doyle Downey.
Here.
Nick Bala.
Hello.
Amanda Galbraith here. Dick McLeod.
Here.
Scott Parental.
Here.
And Ronnie Rurell is excused absence.
Okay, great. Well, we have 8 of 9 directors here. That's a quorum, so we can proceed. We'll move on to amendments to the agenda. Does anyone have any proposals to amend the agenda? Okay, I guess it helps getting that out early, and there's no surprises then. We'll move on to approval of the minutes. These would be the regular board meeting minutes of September 21st. Amanda, as always, has done a great job pulling those together, and they've been sent out previously to the board for review, so I guess I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, great. Any discussion on the minutes?
Fantastic job.
Thank you.
Sounds like you got at least one vote for next year.
She's in landslide.
Vote away, people.
She learned her lesson.
Just keep trying anyway.
I appreciate the efforts.
Okay, if there's no comments, questions, we'll proceed with a voice vote. All in favor of approving the minutes as written, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. The minutes are approved. Moving along then to old business, we have a number of topics to cover today. One is a standing agenda item with Ian giving us an update on where we're at on the lodge renovation planning project.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Just a quick update to let everybody know where we're at with everything. It's just a slide, just a recap of the advisory panel methods that we're using. The RFPs and walkthrough with the bidders took place. We have named and contracted with an architectural firm. We are continuing to collect best ideas, and our advisory panel is meeting by telephone on a weekly basis to continue to collect information to support the need for overall refurbishment of the club and funding of the 20-year plan. We are in the process of finalizing a study session with the architect to look at the progress to date. The Spicer Group, if you recall from our last meeting, is the firm that is doing the work for us. The measurement of the as-built has been completed. They have created CAD drawings of the as-built, and the architectural firm is working on concepts as we speak today, and they will be preparing those for a preliminary discussion with us at a Board of Directors study session, which is at this point tentatively scheduled for October 30th at 7 p.m., close to the architect firm's offices in Clarkson, Michigan. That date, once it is locked in, will be announced. And again, it's a Board of Directors study session. It is open to member attendance, but no member participation at that meeting, as it is a study session. So notice of that meeting will go out once it's finalized.
That's Clarkston?
Clarkston, sorry, yes. Sorry, I'm not a Michigander. I screwed that one up. Sorry. And then just again, the timeline. We are still on target based on the revised timeline that was set. And that's really about the only updates that we have at this point. So.
I would just note that on that date, well, it's still tentative. It looked like we'd get the best board attendance if it was actually on the 29th.
Okay.
So we'll just keep that open for a couple more days, but we'll need to lock it down pretty soon.
I guess one more comment that I would make on the timeline there. It does show at least the plan was hoping to finalize the ballot for the October meeting. I believe that's November 9th. But the architect is working to have it done by deer season, November 15th, and maybe drafting the ballot. So that's why there's that empty triangle that says maybe it's the December meeting, along with other items. So he's certainly on track with the lodge portion, but maybe there's some other ancillary preparation, finance committee support for the actual ballot language.
Well, where we're headed is a study session, a separate study session with finance and audit after the morning meetings on the 9th of November up here. So I think we need to complete that before we can move on to the fine points of the ballot language. So I think December does make a lot of sense. Okay, thanks for that update, Ian. And I guess we have another one for you that wanted to talk about some recent security incidents and what our plans are for implementing the security report we talked about for the newsletter. So,
yes, since the last board meeting, there were a couple of instances that involved security at the club, and also required the support of the sheriff's office in dealing with the instances. This then brought up the further discussion of how much information can we or should we share publicly in public forums. And again, it comes back to the format that we looked at last meeting, where it will just be the number of incidents that will get reported with no specific detail if it cannot be shared because of privacy issues. There are some situations where the membership has been concerned because they've heard something, or there's been rumors, and then gossip or discussion starts on the social media forums that that we need to be careful of how that discussion goes. And whilst we don't monitor the social media sites and we don't control them, whenever there is an instance that should be of concern to the membership from a security standpoint, we will in future be sending out a notice by email blast with a possible link through the website to provide you with more information on a secure side of the website. Specifically, the one that came up in the last month that I know was causing some concern amongst the membership was there was an accident in the woods where a vehicle overturned in the woods, and the sheriff was called out for that one, and then that one snowballed, and there was a lot of speculation on that one. As I said, that one is being handled by the sheriff's office. We also had an incident where the sheriff was called for assistance with an aging member that is struggling with dementia that had to be put into a home temporarily until family could provide support for her. And then an additional sheriff's call was put out because of suspected theft of property from a member's garage, which turned out, I believe, to be an inaccurate report. So we're still trying to consolidate all of this, and this ties back in also to the discussion we're going to have on the newsletter publishing a little bit later on in the agenda. But some of these issues need to be more timely than waiting 4 to 6 weeks for the newsletter to be printed, and that's why a decision will be made when necessary to communicate by email on an email blast of anything that is very sensitive, or if it's something that is escalating on social media that needs to be controlled or corrected because of misinformation that may be out there.
Ian?
Yeah.
I think maybe there's an opportunity for us all to have a positive takeaway from the one incident. We got up, my understanding is, and I got some screenshots sent to me, that there were upwards of 60 comments on the one incident that took something that turned out to not be a theft, fortunately, and had gone into a discussion about the very negative. Let's just say it that way. So without asking questions, it blew up into something that got some of our members in an uproar, got them feeling uncomfortable, cast a bad light on our club. So maybe we just can use that as a learning experience to realize, let's get the facts, let's take a breath, let's go to you before we blow up our own club. I mean, it's shooting ourselves in our own foot. Doesn't make sense.
Well,
I agree.
and one of the key things is that we are not able to share all the facts. I mean, these are personal matters with individuals and could involve law enforcement. There's a line where people have no business getting involved in it. And they won't know all the facts to make an intelligent statement on, Facebook or whatever. So, people have to realize there's sort of a fine line between knowing what's going on and crossing the line into being nosy and potentially wrong on what they're saying and hurting people. So it is a touchy issue. I was thinking more along the lines of having your incident report be more real time. So on such and such a date, we had the sheriff was called for, some high level incident. Doesn't say who, where, and specifically what, but then members could go to the member only website and see that, oh yeah, the club knows about this and is on top of it. Because some of the comments I heard, they're kind of accusing the club of, security not knowing what's going on and not taking action, when in reality, the sheriff is responsible for taking action if it's a criminal issue, and security isn't involved other than to know that it's going on. So I think we're looking for ways to use the club website to provide information and avoid having it turn into an opinioneering on Facebook. Would be my goal, because I think a lot of this can get really bad, as Nick was saying, a lot of wrong information, and people can get hurt by it. So, and unintentionally, but it still happens, and there's no excuse for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Scott, also, I'd encourage you, if you know people posting negative stuff on the web, to talk to them, because we're constantly trying to recruit new members, and the security is a huge selling point to our club. I mean, the point of having security in our cabins and homes up here versus somebody buying 40 acres outside the club is a big selling point. Plus, like they said, a lot of this turns out to be negative, but once it's on the web, it's on there, and people start searching whether they want to join Lost Lake. You can't get that off it. So, and the continuing thing of trying to recruit new members, it's a negative to have this on the web.
Nick and Scott couldn't have really nailed it anymore. I guess we really got to learn, because it's happened a few times this year where assumption and commitment to a little bit of drama has really hurt our club. I mean, it's our place. And when we don't think before we post these things, or we don't go to the right sources and ask the right questions, we're only hurting ourselves. It's self-inflicted wounds that it's time for them to stop. It's a little silly. The other one thing we didn't mention too is it leads to losing quality volunteers. People start thinking, why am I going to volunteer if I'm just going to be bashed? So let's protect ourselves a little better.
Well, I guess the comment that I would make, and I certainly agree with everything that everyone has said here, but I think we kind of have to reflect that times have changed, and so has the expectations of the membership. Now, you can go onto your phone. Most people, before they get out of bed, they check their phone. They know the current time of the stock market. They know what Trump tweeted overnight. And they know where things are going on in their world. At the same time, everybody said we do not want our club drama smeared across the pages, but our members have an expectation for this feedback. So I think it's probably we have to come to grips with. And we had talked about having an online tip line when Ian presented this last time. That sounds great. We all know about Nextdoor and other tools where people comment. We just want that behind the closed door. And most corporations, when they do this, they provide a real-time feed to those that need it. So I just think we have to come back realistically and say, oh, well, we're going to do it in the blotter. We do an occasional email. I still don't think that's going to ultimately serve the purpose that we all outline. Just as my comment.
Part of that comes back to this, though. We do have sources we can call. We don't get contact as a board on a regular basis on some of these questions of these things.
Things aren't reported.
Yeah, and there's responsibility on the membership. We have kind of two options. We all pitch in together, neighborhood watch, communicating better without assumption, or we can spend more monies out of our revenues and hire an organization to do that for us. That doesn't seem like a very good idea. We have to make a better commitment as a group on our side, like we're taking steps to get out the blotter, but we also need the membership to squash some of the things that we do and go right to the source. That would have never gotten out of line had we asked the questions first before we made assumptions and started down this negative path.
Well, and that's where I think we need to talk about how we are actually going to accomplish that. Doyle was kind of indicating to me, at least I was interpreting that as we now officially need to be monitoring Facebook at Open Topics, and our communication policy is that we are not going to do that as a club, because if we start accepting that as the standard communication tool for the club, then the club becomes liable for what's said on there, and also is liable for providing the resources to monitor it and correct things, and I don't think we can count on that. So I don't see us backing away from social media as not an official tool of the club, but we do need to provide that service, if you will, or that information, make it available. And we can change that policy, I guess, any time, but that's where we are right now. So.
Well, I guess just to clarify, my comments were not intended to say that we should back away. I agree. I voted for the policy. I don't think we should be on Facebook. That is not the media. And again, if we reflect on corporations that actively engage with this, kind of a bit the next point, there is somebody who's on point to do that communication. It is a push, so it's not a Facebook social media where there's the back and forth, but it is contained within the membership. Because you can think about emails, but real time, the incident, I think, I didn't know the details that you said a senior with dementia, what do they call those, silver alerts? That's great. I happen to know the cops stopped by and talked to some contractors and told them to lock their doors on their cars and make sure that the keys weren't in the car. And they're like, oh, is there an escaped convict? That's not somebody being crazy. When the cops tell me to lock my doors. So, again, just like the silver alerts, those are some active media. It does cost a little money, but that's my point. Not maybe using social media, but I think there's a lot of tools that are now available for a very low. The example is text alerts. I think maybe we talked a couple of years ago at election time for literally a penny a an address, you can push a text out to all members that says silver alert. That would totally change the context of any social interaction. That's all I'm saying. There are other tools.
That's a
Sounds like
good
we're all on the
idea.
same page then.
And the one thing we should clarify, if Ian identified or has in the past something that was critical to the membership to know now, immediately, I mean, there's literally a fire, it's going to go out. So I don't want anybody to think that we wouldn't address something that was of utmost, importance at the moment.
Yeah, no, I mean, thank you for clarifying that, Nick. Fortunately, the incidents that have taken place over the last few months have been isolated instances that have not indicated a threat to the general membership. The reference that you made just now, Doyle, about telling contractors to lock their vehicles because the individual that had rolled their vehicle in the woods, the sheriff was trying to locate them at that time, and it was active with the sheriff, and it was contained within 2 hours. And so by the time that we were on top of that situation, there was no need to send a further bulletin out. A member at the time that was actually involved in the process determined that he knew contractors were working in the vicinity that the sheriff was searching, and that contractors typically leave their keys in their vehicles, and wanted to just alert them just to lock their vehicles for the time being until this individual was found. So.
Well, I'm not sure we have anything to take action on here today, but I think the recent issues have, at least convinced me that we need to have a more comprehensive communication plan around security, going from the immediate issue, maybe texting for really time-sensitive things, and then maybe an updated version with a little more information on the website so you can check and see on such and such a date the sheriff was in here for, a domestic dispute or a silver alert or whatever whatever our high-level categories are, and then the newsletter would be the least responsive. So I think maybe, Ian, if we can come back with a plan next month on how we're going to expand this communication methodology around security issues, because I know it's important to everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Scott, you got it. Scott.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tammy.
Tammy Hertman-Dyka. There's a lot of perception around the club from members that the board doesn't do anything to react to violations that have been known by members and such. And I know that I've heard several members say, we used to print it in the newsletter that so-and-so was caught doing this and whatever, and I'm not privy to that information because I wasn't a member way back when, but just like the blotters in the Alpena News or the Alcona Review, wellness call, unlocked door call, animal call, those kind of things. I think with the security questionnaire that we sent out to the membership and some of the things that I heard resulting from that, I think the membership is expecting to see some kind of report such as that. Not necessarily with names, because I explained to them we can't put names in there because of what the situation was, but such as a buck was taken with only 2 points on either side and the board took action. Somebody was caught, underage kids driving unattended without a guardian. Just to know that that's what the members are really looking for based on my conversation with many of them. I know with some of these other instances that have taken place, many people don't lock their doors, they leave their keys in their vehicles, they feel this is a safe place. So when you put those claims to rest that it's an incident that didn't merit any concern because it wasn't really a breaking and entering or anything like that, but when people need to know that they're safe in their homes here, and whether it be to take action and start locking their doors and taking their keys out of their vehicles, they want to know that, this is still a safe place to be. So I don't know what your further discussion is as far as what kind of information you're going to be putting in the newsletter, but I'm saying that the membership is looking for some concrete information that the board is doing something instead of letting the incidents just, go unknown to the membership.
Well, that was, again, the purpose of the newsletter, is to basically share that information. But these recent issues that have occurred, incidents with the sheriff involved, that generated a whole bunch of questions from members. What's going on? Well, they're not going to wait 6 weeks to the next newsletter to find out. They get on social media and start speculating, and people pile on speculating more. And so the intent would be, we've got to come up with a way to at least have people aware that, yes, security is aware of this, the sheriff's handling it, that we can't tell you any more than basically, the high-level description of what kind of a investigation it is, and that's it. But at least it shows there's some place people can go to find out, yes, they know about it, or, and it was kind of a, if it's a breaking and entering, we see 10 of those, you can start locking your door at night. The club is an extremely safe place, but it's not 100% safe. Exactly. And you can't, with one security officer, you can't prevent everything from happening in here. So, and when it's something that's of a criminal nature or involves government intervention, we're going to rely on the sheriff and we should do that. We shouldn't have our security guy who's not qualified get involved in those kind of things. It's not fair for the people involved or the security guy. So.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I'm sure many members will appreciate that, to know that kind of information right up front, that, if it is a situation that they need to take more reaction or action itself to that type of situation, and then they're aware of it immediately rather than later. So thank you.
And just to make a comment on that, the specific instances that we're talking about that escalated on social media, not one member reached out to me to ask what was going on. Not one. They chose to ask other members on social media without getting any actual facts. So
I knew what was going on because it's close neighbors. So
okay, but my point is, the club is doing stuff, and if you have a concern, reach out and we can tell you that we're aware of it, that it's under control. I can't share any information at this time, whatever, so.
Well, I've responded to some of them that, your best course of action is to either contact your manager or one of your board members, probably the manager because you're on site, but and I know that somebody at some other point says, the best way you're going to get an answer to this is to talk to the manager.
Right.
So, throughout time, somebody has, at one point or another, unless you want to read through all those threads, has commented that your best course of action is obviously to talk to you, but it's a lot easier for them to just respond to that social media and then move on, rather than to take the steps to try and get the facts.
Right.
I know we went at some length, and you're ready to move on, Scott. From a strategy point, if we think about this, offense is always better than defense. And, rather than waiting for somebody to ask that question, there's always value to push those things out first. I know myself, they say it in politics, if you got a problem, go early, go ugly early and let that out. If I make a mistake at work, my boss expects me to tell him about that right away. So, like I said, offense rather than defense is always better.
Yep, sage advice. Okay, well, like I said, the intent wasn't to solve it here today, but to recognize that it's a bigger problem than putting a monthly report in the newsletter. So we'll look forward to Ian's recommendations, and it has to be balanced with the resources we have at the club. But I would like to try to funnel all the information through the manager, and then we can all trust him to make sure that he's reporting the appropriate information. Okay, great. The next topic is an update on the storage barn access road and the plans for construction of that. Just by way of background, we approved that storage barn project on membership ballot, and part of the project was an access road to the building off of Fox. We had been using the side of the sod field as the access road for temporary reasons, and the thought was proposed that maybe we want to continue doing that to save the money of building a road, and it was less intrusive, but there are some concerns from golf about doing that. That is kind of a congested area with golf carts going to and from the course, as well as people using the driving range. So Ian's been talking with the golf committee and trying to get a solution to the final permanent road there. So as soon as he gets done fixing the conference call, we'll talk about that in some more detail.
Sorry, I dropped the call for something.
So it looked like
Please enter your access code. The access code you entered is invalid. You entered 41355931777. Please re-enter your access code followed by the pound. To enable audio control.
Does anybody know of a good phone company?
Somewhere
I
down.
don't think we've hit on it yet.
One not in northern Michigan.
Well, to those online, hopefully you're hearing now, and I apologize for the technical difficulties. So after the introduction, I think, Ian, you're up to explain what we're going to do with this road construction.
Yes, as I believe Scott alluded to the fact that since now the pole barn has been built, we've been looking at whether we need to invest in the additional road down to Fox. In discussions with the golf committee and many on the membership that was part of the ballot proposal, and that it needs.
There's 9 board members, but Doyle talks more than the other 9 combined.
Thanks, Gary.
See, somebody's listening. I think it's pretty obvious that you need to go on mute unless you're addressing the audience, so thank you.
Right now we're getting maintenance is working on getting Charbonneau in to provide a quote to get that road cut, and then we'll be putting a culvert in the ditch on Fox Road, and taking down a couple of trees to get that road put in. Timeline on it will be sometime through. If we can get it done before the freeze, otherwise it will be after the freeze, but it will certainly be before next season starts.
Do you have a sketch or an idea of that? One of the comments I've heard is members don't really want to see the barn from the road, and if we drive by the golf shop, you can always see a building from the main road. Any comment on that?
Yes, obviously we've got to look at the site, but the intent is to have the road coming in off of Fox on an angle so that the sight line will not display the building through the cut. So if you're going east on Fox, likely it will be angled at a 45 degree to Fox, so that you don't actually get a straight sight of the barn. And then we will follow the tree line as close as we can on the west side of the sod field over to the barn location. So.
Do we have to have a site plan approved for that road?
No.
Is that part
I've
of the
been
original?
told no. Tammy, that was part of the original building application, I believe.
That was part of the
Yep.
original.
Yeah. Which is approved.
Okay.
Will there need to be a culvert permit pulled from the county for that?
I believe so.
I guess what I was getting at is who are we going to consult on the design of this thing in its final form before we start constructing it, just so we're happy with what,
So we never heard what they're talking about, some new road, possibly to the new.
whoever's on the phone talking, we can hear you, so please go on mute.
One's going quiet again.
I would like to go back to the ad hoc committee that Bob was heading up that oversaw the pole barn design and bring them back in the loop to assist with that.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea.
As long as you're okay with that, Bob.
My concerns.
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
Yeah.
I think all the committee except for myself are here on site.
Right.
So they would be able to confer with you and take a look at it.
There are regulations for private roads and their designs, what's required of them. So this would be a roadway, actually, in all actuality. I can check with the county what they've got listed for that.
Is it a road or a driveway?
Well,
It's a driveway, really.
they may constitute it as something different, as a roadway, just like your roadway going into that's not really a driveway, that's part of your road infrastructure that's going into the golf course.
Okay.
And so this would be the same thing. So that's what I'm talking about. You know, you could be, I mean, for the 2 days out of the year that sees high traffic, you know, going through that sod farm, I looked at that, that's not sod, that's crap down there. And I know the sprinkler system don't work. So, you know, I just really don't understand why the club has to go through the expenditure of that when it worked out, as far as I know, really well this year for what we had. So that's just my 2 cents, but I will look and get some clarification on that, whether it's considered a roadway or a driveway.
How much club stuff is in that barn right now? The answer is zero.
No.
No.
There's we're storing skeet and track
targets.
stuff in there. We're storing archery stuff in there. There is beverages stored in there.
Well, hopefully they're out before it freezes.
Yes. Yeah.
No, my point is, I'm kind of where Tammy's at. I mean, that road will have 1 or 2 days of a high use right before and right after the rummage sale and that. To put another roadway into Fox for that, to me, seems like poor use of the limited capital that we've got. You were with me on finance with the rest of the committee on that, and we basically had to cut about $200,000 worth of requests out to get the capital budget balance that we're going to be bringing to the board next month. And that, to me, like Tammy said, I didn't see any issue with parking on the grass. They're going to be parking on the grass whether they come in off of Fox or if they come in the side road. 1 day of inconvenience to the golf committee seems minor to me. And then also just managing the traffic with 2 roads going to the north during that event versus 1 just seems like we're compounding the issue. We're not making it simpler by putting the road in. So I would ask the voters really think hard before they put that road in off of Fox and continue with the one off of the golf course access road until time that there really is a demonstrated problem multiple years.
Well, obviously, this debate needs to involve the golf committee. I don't know if we have a representative here or not, but I think if we're going to have that debate, then they need to be involved in it.
And they're done for the season as far as their meetings go. Brad, what are your thoughts as liaison? You want to reach out to Jim Mead and have
Reach out to Jim Mead.
and let's have a further discussion on it.
Yep.
I mean, I agree with Brian. I question the need for it, but as the golf committee has reminded us, it was part of the ballot proposal that the membership voted on, and if we don't honour that, is that going to be an issue with some of the membership? So I've got to look at both sides of it. So
I'm not saying not to do an access road. I'm just saying maybe there's a more cost-efficient, effective access to it.
Well, I think maybe this ends up being, I think, an issue that potentially affects everybody if it isn't from the financial aspect, it's from the pleasability aspect. Maybe we could talk to golf and see if we can't arrange this as an agenda topic for the next meeting and make a decision with all the parties present, and we can notify the members we're going to have that discussion. So I'm going to be gone next month, but Bob is looking forward to having a good, healthy debate. So,
Well, in actuality, the information going out to the membership was for the building.
no, it was clearly defined that there would be an access road off of Fox in the ballot proposal.
Ballot background.
Yeah, I looked at it last night.
On there, just to remind everybody that it was part of what everybody voted on the ballot, so.
Well, and to be fair, that was part of the negotiations with all the interested parties. You know, we had Skeet and Trap involved in it originally when it was going to be on the other side of the street, and Golf agreed to go with this approach under the understanding that that access road would come off of Fox, not off of Gulf Drive. So it's, you know, I think we do need to honor their position on that. That's what we originally agreed to, but, you know, information's changed. We think from what we've seen that a more practical solution would be to continue along the edge of the sod field, but I don't know all the facts of how that impacts golf. So let's have that discussion and we'll make a decision.
Okay.
Okay, that brings us up to the last old business topic, and that is to approve the contract for our 2019-2020 timber harvest. We originally approved the contract, then we had some issues that we needed to resolve with how the cut was going to interface with the horse trails in that cut zone 1, and we made those modifications with a what we consider to be a sort of a balanced compromise solution, but it did impact the contract, and the amendments to the contract have been made, so it's coming back for reapproval by the board in its amended form.
Yes, I just wanted to represent it to the board because the revisions that were made is resulting in a reduction of revenue of $2,400, and I just wanted to be sure that the board is approving that change in the revenue that will be received from this year's timber cut. That brings the drops the total revenue due into. Where's that number gone?
This is 123 and change, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, there it is. 123,350 is the revised revenue that will come from this year's cut. So I just needed to go into the board minutes and get the board to approve that.
Okay, I think we discussed in great detail in the past the changes we're going to make to accommodate the horse trails as best we could. We can go through that again if we need to, but you know, essentially this was going to reduce the number of trees we took out of that zone 1 and add some additional trails. So you know, that's going to hopefully make up for some of the timber, but as you see, there's $2,500 or so of timber that comes out of the contract, and you know, that's lost revenue for the club. But I'll just remind everybody that, you know, our policy is not to make money on timber. It's a habitat project in balance with all the other club needs. So I think this is a good investment in keeping everybody happy, and I certainly support it, but I'd open it up for discussion.
Scott, just to clarify.
No, Ed, you're right.
Just to clarify this for the membership, Ian's bringing forth the $2,500 for approval, not that we base the original decision on finances, to your point, Scott, because that's a point of discussion out there. He's bringing it because there is a change in the contract, not because we're debating, do we need $2,500 or more. Our first and foremost decision on it is indeed the forestry program, just to reiterate.
Yep, correct. I'm reminded of procedure. I think we probably need to get a motion to approve this change, and then we can discuss it.
I make a motion to approve the amended contract.
Second.
Okay. Now we can get a head start, but
What I just said a minute ago.
yes, it's still in the minutes. We'll just change the order a little bit. So that, in a nutshell, is it. We approved the contract once. It's been changed, reduced proceeds by a small amount, and we're looking to approve it today so that Amanda and I would sign that contract as the board representatives. We can proceed then with the cut. Any other discussion related to this?
Hey, Scott, and just a point of discussion, because I've talked to a number of people, in fact, two of them up in the dining room last night, about this controversy coming up, and I think maybe a way to heading this off is to move the cut program or the proposed cuts out another year so they got to look at it, because everybody said we didn't know it was coming until it was marked, and then by then the discussion is, we've already put it out for bid. So if you move that out, and let's say we're publishing the ones a year ahead clearly, so that people can put it in the Lost Lake News several times, we might be able to head off some of the controversy of what's being cut around certain areas, because I understand part of the thing that they're talking about is maybe cutting that thing from the front gate towards the bar at some point in the next year, where you got an archery range or walk-through archery range and stuff. But I just think you might head off some controversy by publishing and moving your cut thing another year out.
This process of timber cutting is almost a 2-year process from the time these cuts are identified. They may not be totally made public, but I think maybe we need to be more informative of this. But the fact of the matter, the way I see it, is that a lot of members don't really care until the trees are painted. They just don't. I mean, because there's maps put out with Unit 1, 2, 3. In fact, there's a woods tour coming up that I'll make an announcement at the end of the meeting. But it's not, we're going to paint the trees and cut them right away. That's not the way it goes.
Well, and I agree. I think, there's always different perspectives on this, but I think Dick's right. We haven't communicated as well as we could have in the past, and I would certainly think it would be wise for us as a club to take a look at that whole process and see if we can improve that communication. But I'm not really in favor of letting it impact the 2019-2020 cut. We've talked about this through the normal process. We've talked about it at great length in remediating the horse trail piece of it. So I think we're ready to go ahead and just get it done. But for next year, I'm all in favor of having a workshop.
To try and change, which
I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
That was voted on last meeting and
Yep.
over and done. I'm just saying in the future.
I think that's good advice, and we should take a look at that. Any other board commentary on this subject? Otherwise, we'll turn it over to the membership. Brian, have you got?
Scott, from the Conservation Committee. As Bob said, this is a 2-year process. After the board approved basically this map 2 years ago on it, these areas to cut in that, I think and it gets posted on the conservation page, and to Dick's point, that it may be worthwhile using a page of the newsletter that after the board approves the boundaries a year out on it, that go into the newsletter, so that there is some reaction time before, again, the detailed marking is done in that. So I'll take it back to the Conservation Committee to see if we can work with the board to refine that process. Like I said, maybe we've been trying, I think the process has been trying to save the page in the newsletter